Welcome to the Mystic Media channel, and I am back with part 2 of the Astrological Case Study on Andrea Yates. So I'm going to pick up from where I left off on this Wikipedia post dealing with her background, the trials, the actual date of the murder, all that. So I'm on the section dealing with the trials. Now, Yates confessed to drowning her children prior to her second trial. She told Dr. Michael Wellner that she waited for Rusty to leave for work that morning before filling the bathtub because she knew he would have prevented her from harming them. After the murders, police found the family dog locked up. Rusty advised Wellner that it had normally been allowed to run free, and was so when he had left the house that morning, leading the psychiatrist to allege that she locked it in a cage to prevent it from interfering with her killing the children one by one. Rusty got a family friend, George Parham, to act as her attorney, which is really strange. And that says a lot about Rusty because getting a family friend, he should have tried to hire the best attorney that his money could afford for his wife. Although the defense's expert testimony agreed that Yates was psychotic, Texas law requires that in order to successfully assert the insanity defense, the defendant must prove that he or she could not discern right from wrong at the time of the crime. In March 2002, a jury rejected the insanity defense and found her guilty. Although the prosecution had sought the death penalty, the jury refused that option. The trial court sentenced her to life imprisonment in the Texas Department of Criminal Justice with eligibility for parole in 40 years. On January 6, 2005, the Texas Court of Appeals reversed the conviction. All right, let me just skip through some of this. On July 26, 2006, after 3 days of deliberations, Yates was found not guilty by reason of insanity, as defined by the state of Texas. She was thereafter committed to the North Texas State Hospital Vernon campus. In January 2007, she was moved to a low-security state mental hospital in Kerrville. Although psychiatrists for both Texas state prosecutors and her defense lawyers agreed that she was severely mentally ill with one of several psychotic diseases at the time she killed her children, the state of Texas asserted that she was, by legal definition, aware enough to judge her actions as right or wrong despite her mental defect. I agree with that ruling. The prosecution further implies spousal revenge as motive for the killings, despite the conclusion of defense experts that there was no evidence to support such a motive. I don't agree with that motive. Although the original jury believed she was legally aware of her actions, they disagreed that her motive was spousal revenge. Okay, now Rusty Yates. So, according to trial testimony in 2006, Dr. Saeed advised Rusty, a former NASA engineer, which is very telling, that type of career, not to leave Yates unattended. However, he began leaving her alone with the children in the weeks leading up to the drownings for short periods of time, apparently to improve her independence. He had announced at a family gathering the weekend before the drownings that he had decided to leave her alone for an hour each morning and evening so that she would not become totally dependent on him and his mother for her maternal responsibilities. Now, this is where I really point the finger at Rusty, because Rusty knew full well her condition, but he decided to start leaving her alone with the kids. Now, Andrea Yates, let me just pull up her asteroids. Andrea Yates' sun is conjoined to Nemesis. And Nemesis basically points to where blame is placed. So with the sun representing her husband, that's very telling. Basically, her sun is conjoined to Nemesis, meaning her husband is largely to blame for these murders, just as much, if not more, than she is. All right, moving along. Yates' brother, Brian Kennedy, told Larry King on a broadcast of CNN's Larry King Live that Rusty expressed to him in 2001 While transporting her to Devereaux Treatment Facility, that all depressed people needed was a swift kick in the pants to get them motivated. Now that brings me to his chart, because being as though he was born in the same year as Andrea Yates, his South Node is not in Capricorn, but it's in Sagittarius. His North Node is in Gemini. His Sun is conjoined to Pluto. And that right there, that hookup can deal with someone that, is prone to show tough love, where they're not going to have that sensitivity. Now, let me finish. Her mother, Jutta Kennedy, expressed shock when she heard of Rusty's plan while at the gathering with them, saying Yates wasn't stable enough to care for the children. She noted that Yates demonstrated she wasn't in her right mind when she nearly choked Mary by trying to feed her solid food. According to authors Susie Spencer and Suzanne O'Malley, who investigated her story in great detail, it was during a phone call Dr. Saeed made to Rusty during the breaking news of the killing that Saeed first learned that she was not being supervised full-time. Yates' first psychologist, Dr. Eileen Starbrandt, says she was shocked to disbelief when during an office visit with the couple, they expressed a desire to discontinue her medication so she could become pregnant again. This is coming from Rusty Yates. So, and you can see because Rusty Yates, his Mars is in Cancer, is conjoined to his Venus in Cancer. This could be a person that when they're in a relationship or marriage, they basically call the shots. It's basically their way or the highway, and they see their partner as an extension of themselves. You could say they treat their partner as an extension of themselves. And with that Cancer energy, he was all about creating a family, creating as many children as he could, as nature would allow. Remember, that's what they had said, but again, that's coming from him. So his Sun being conjoined to Pluto at the 13th degree points to, again, his desire to create a lot of progeny, to propagate his genetics or his seed and have a lot of children. Basically, he must have felt empowered in that respect. Now, reading along, she warned, meaning the psychiatrist, and counseled them against having more children, and noted in the medical record 2 days later, apparently patient and husband plan to have as many babies as nature will allow! ! This will surely guarantee future psychotic depression. Nevertheless, Yates became pregnant with her fifth child, Mary, only 7 weeks after being discharged from Dr. Starbrandt's care on January 12, 2000. Rusty stated to the media he was never told by psychiatrists that his wife was psychotic, nor that she could harm the children, and that had he known otherwise, he would never have had more children. Now that is a bald-faced lie. He's a straight-up liar. Now, again, go back to Andrea Yates' Sun being conjoined to Nemesis, and that points to her husband being largely to blame for the deaths of these children. Now, going back to his chart, he has Sun conjoined to Pluto, which can make him very controlling, but that also deals with the death of his children, especially because his conjunction is at the 13th degree. 13 is death. But it can also make him very totalitarian, very uncompromising. Also, he has this conjunction, including the moon, including Uranus, opposing Chiron in Pisces, which makes him a liar. So that points to him making up the fact that, or making up the lie, saying that he didn't know that she was psychotic when he was the main one taking her to the doctor. He was totally consumed in her life with respect to her mental illness. So the fact that he's saying that he had no idea is a bald-faced lie. Now, reading along, it says, however, she revealed to her prison psychiatrist, Dr. Melissa Ferguson, that prior to their last child, she had told Rusty that she did not want to have sex because Dr. Starbrandt had said she might hurt her children. Rusty, she said, simply asserted his procreative religious beliefs, complimented her as a good mother, and persuaded her that she could handle more children. Now that again deals with his Mars being conjoined to Venus, not even taking into account her her feelings, her needs, none of that, being totally like self-absorbed, being totally bent upon having this family. And then that also deals with what he said about his what she said about his procreative religious beliefs that could deal with Sun conjoined to Pluto, opposition Chiron and Pisces. Also, he has Saturn in Pisces at the 0 degree, squaring his Jupiter in Taurus. That right there deals with that, mainly with that procreated religious belief. That Jupiter in Taurus will deal with if it's contacting a personal planet and it's contacting his moon at this. Well, I don't know what time he was born, but I'm guessing that his moon is at the latter degrees of Virgo. He was probably born after. He was probably born around this time because that would take into account that his moon is close to Pluto. And again, that deals with him wanting to propagate his seed, wanting to have a big family. It also deals with his wife basically being psychotic, basically. That moon could join the Pluto in Virgo because Virgo represents the mental health. So with his moon and trine to Jupiter, that right there could point to him having a large family and feeling like he has the right to propagate his seed. That Taurus influence. Men with strong Taurus influence, a lot of times they do want a lot of children. They do have a need to propagate their seed. All right, reading along. O'Malley highlighted Rusty's continuing sense of unreality regarding having more children. During the trial, he successfully maintained the position that Yates would be found innocent. So he's very delusional with that opposition involving Chiron and Pisces and his Sun, Pluto, Moon, and Uranus. Also, Saturn in Pisces squaring his Jupiter in Taurus. Also, Mars and Venus in quincunx Saturn in Pisces, in particular his Venus in quincunx Saturn in Pisces. That's like him keeping his wife in prison or keeping her in a state of confinement with respect to having all those children. Now, during the trial, he successfully maintained the position that Yates would be found innocent. I already said that. That's him being delusional. He had fantasies of having more children with her after she was successfully treated in a mental health facility and released on the proper medication. Again, that deals with that Chiron and Pisces opposing his Sun and Pluto and Moon in Virgo. Also, Venus in Cancer in quincunx to Saturn and Pisces. He worked his way through various fixes for damaged lives, such as a surrogate motherhood and adoption, horrifying her family attorneys and Houston psychiatrists before giving in to reality. Now, my thing is, this is where the other people involved in this, the psychiatrist, her family, I feel like this is where they dropped the ball because I feel like they could have did more to put a stop to his madness. Here's the section about the medical community. Rusty contended that as a psychiatrist, Dr. Said was responsible for recognizing and properly treating Yates' psychosis, not a medically untrained person like himself. So here he is deflecting blame, and that very much deals with that Chiron and Pisces, opposing that Virgo stellium, also Saturn and Pisces, squaring Jupiter in Taurus, and also the Saturn and Pisces and quincunx to his Venus in Cancer. Yates claimed that, despite his urging to check her medical records for prior treatment, Dr. Said had refused to continue her regimen of the antipsychotic Haldol, the treatment that had worked for her during her first breakdown in 1999. Now, if he was having problems with Dr. Said, why didn't he switch doctors? The real question to me is, how could he have been so ill and the medical community not diagnose her, not treat her, and obviously not protect our family from her? Rusty testified that he never knew that she had visions and voices, which is a lie because she would talk to him about stuff like that. He said he never knew she had considered killing the children. Neither did Dr. Said, even though the delusions could have been found in medical records from 1999. He reluctantly prescribed Haldol, the same drug that worked in a drug cocktail for her in 1999. But after a few weeks, he took her off the drug, citing his concerns about side effects, though her condition seemed to be worsening 2 days before the drowning. When Rusty drove her to Dr. Said's office, He testified. The doctor refused to try Haldol longer, and he returned her to the hospital. So just 2 days before the drownings, he returned her to the hospital, but he thought it was okay to start leaving her alone with the kids. So my thing is, like, this really, like, gets me worked up, because I'm like, he should have been prosecuted as well for negligence. He should have been prosecuted for being an accomplice to these murders, being an indirect accomplice. But the way his chart is, I feel like and the way the Synastry is lined up, I feel like he might have even been, like, directly to blame, because it seems like he was almost getting off on this whole psychotic nightmare that Andrea was going through. It's just crazy. Now, he added that his wife was too sick to be discharged from her last day in the hospital in May 2001. He said he noticed the staff lowered their heads as if in shame and embarrassment, turning away without saying a word. The hospital had no choice due to the 10-day psychiatric hospitalization insurance constraints of their provider, Blue Cross Blue Shield, subcontracted by Magellan Health Services. Again, all of this, her going into the hospital, psychiatric hospital, her having these breakdowns, the medication. To reiterate, that deals with her Neptune. Let me go back to her chart. That deals with her Neptune running parallel to Psyche. Here it is right here. And Pluto in Virgo in opposition to Estrella. So the asteroid Estrella is opposed to her Pluto in Virgo, and that deals with her basically being on prolonged regimens of medication, because Estrella's in Pisces, but it also deals with her extended stays in the psychiatric ward and how she couldn't stay any longer because of the insurance reasons. It also deals with her basically taking too much medication, because as I read on further, you'll see what I'm talking about. Now, here's the section on antidepressants and homicidal ideation. Rusty and his birth family claimed a combination of antidepressants improperly prescribed by Dr. Said in the days before the tragedy was responsible for Yates' violent psychotic behavior. Now, I do believe that these psychotic meds, these psych meds did play a major role in her killing these children. But like I said, Andrea Yates was naturally inclined towards depression. She was naturally inclined towards having schizophrenic symptoms. She was naturally inclined towards psychotic episodes, but the drugs definitely made it worse. And I feel like if it wasn't for the drugs, she probably wouldn't have went as far as killing her children. So that Pluto in Virgo opposition Estrella, I feel like that's the smoking gun with respect to the medication. Also, Neptune parallel Psyche as well, and where some of her doctors are implicated in this, because they were just prescribing her all types of psych meds with not really using any prudence. And again, that could deal with Pluto and Virgo opposition of Estrella, because that Virgo deals with prudence. So that could deal with a lack of prudence with respect to prescribing those psych meds. Reading along. Andrea was on 450 milligrams of the Effexor, among other medications, and was, in his opinion, severely over-medicated. The psychiatrist said he would reduce the Effexor from 450 milligrams to 350 milligrams. To 300 milligrams, He protested and quoted his own extensive research on the antidepressant. He said he read it shouldn't be reduced by more than 75 milligrams every 3 or 4 days, not 150 milligrams in one day. According to Dr. Moira Dolan, executive director of the Medical Accountability Network, homicidal ideation was added to the warning label of the antidepressant drug Effexor as a rare adverse event in 2005. Yates, she said, had been taking 450 milligrams twice the recommended maximum dose for a month before killing her children. Dolan reviewed her medical record at the request of Rusty. Yates had been prescribed Effexor in varying doses since shortly after her first suicide attempt in 1999, said Dolan, who reviewed her medical records after her first trial at the request of Rusty. A month before the murders, her daily dose had increased to 450 milligrams, twice the recommended maximum dose, Dolan said. Dr. Lucy Puryear, an expert witness hired by Yates' defense team, countered their contention, regarding the administration of her antidepressants, saying the dosages prescribed by Dr. Saeed are not uncommon in practice and had nothing at all to do with her re-emergent psychosis. She suggested rather that her psychosis returned as a result of the Haldol having been discontinued by her doctor 2 weeks earlier. The oral form of Haldol takes 4 to 6 days after discontinuation to reach a terminal plasma level of under 1.5%, a medical standard for complete elimination of a drug from the body. Again, all of this pertains to her Neptune running parallel to Psyche and Pluto and Virgo opposing Astraea. Religious influences. Media outlets allege that Michael Warnernicki, an itinerant preacher whom Rusty had met while attending Auburn University, bears some responsibility for the deaths due to his fire and brimstone message. Okay, now let me go back to Rusty's chart. Now, Rusty has Jupiter in Taurus, square Saturn in Pisces. That right there could deal with him basically getting into like getting sucked into like a cult-like group or following a cult-like religious leader. All right. Let me see. Bears some responsibility for the deaths due to his fire and brimstone message and certain teachings found in the newsletter, The Precious Perilous Times, that they had received on occasion, and which was entered into evidence at the trial. Another interesting thing is that Andrea Yates has Neptune in Scorpio opposed to Jupiter in Taurus, and that deals with the religious influence that had a major impact upon her delusions. In the aftermath of her 2006 retrial and insanity verdict, television journalist Chris Cuomo reported on ABC Primetime that Andrea Yates' delusions were fueled by the extreme religious beliefs of a bizarre, itinerant street preacher named Michael Warnernicki. Again, that deals with her Jupiter in Taurus, opposing Neptune in Scorpio. Both Rusty Yates and Michael Warnernicki have rejected these accusations. Rusty said his family's relationship with the Warnernickis was not that close, and that Warnernicki did not cause her delusions. Warnernicki maintained that his correspondence with them was with the intention of helping them strengthen their marriage and find the love that he says his own family had found in Jesus. Both men agreed the alleged connection between his message and her mental state was nothing more than media-created fiction. While in prison, Yates stated she had considered killing the children for 2 years, adding that they thought she was not a good mother and claimed her sons were developing improperly. She told her jail psychiatrist, "It was the 7th deadly sin. My children weren't righteous. They stumbled because I was evil." Again, that's her Jupiter opposing Neptune in Scorpio. "The way I was raising them, they could never be saved. They were doomed to perish in the fires of hell." Now, back to her son being conjoined to Nemesis. Again, that points to her husband's influence, him being largely to blame, but it also points to her placing blame on her own children, which is why she killed them. So the sun represents her husband, but it also represents her children. So again, Nemesis deals where you place blame. So basically, she was blaming her children for not being righteous, and that was her rationale for killing them. Also, her North Node is running parallel to Demeter. Where is that at? Oh, that's Rusty. Hold on. Her North Node is running parallel to Demeter. Right here. And her Demeter is at the 0 degree of Gemini. I'm sorry, the 1st degree of Gemini, and that could deal with material that she reads or information that she receives that is a catalyst for her basically having this hell, fire, and brimstone type of mentality, which prompted her to kill her children. So Demeter deals with hell or Hades. It deals with where you are taken down to hell or whatever. So that could deal with her fears of going to hell, her fears of her children going to hell, and as a result, she killed him. All right. That's basically it. So let me get into their synastry. Let me just talk about Rusty's chart a little bit more before I get into their synastry, because his chart is something else. As you can see, he has a wicked stellium in Virgo. Someone like that, especially he got those heavy planets on his sun. He got Pluto and Uranus flanking his sun. Someone like that is prone to mental illness. When we're talking about that Virgo energy in particular, because Virgo rules mental health, including, it rules health period, but including mental health. So he has that wicked Virgo stellium, Sun and Pluto at the 13th degree of Virgo. Like I said, that deals with the death of his children. His Sun is also conjoined to Uranus, can make him very uncompromising, can make him very much about sticking to some type of routine, sticking to some type of program, being very rigid. So I'm looking at him basically putting his wife through hell. Again, that Virgo stellium opposes his Chiron in Pisces. His Chiron is at the 16th degree of Pisces, which reinforces that Pisces energy. So again, makes him a bald-faced liar. His Mars is conjoined to Venus in Cancer. Again, that makes him basically be very insular and also very self-absorbed in relationships where his partner, his wife, is basically an extension of himself. And that's how he was able to turn a blind eye to her psychosis time and time again. That's part of the reason why he was able to just leave her alone with those kids. And also, his Neptune is at the 15th degree of Scorpio, same as with her Neptune. So his Neptune is opposing her Jupiter, just like her Neptune was opposing her Jupiter. Also, his Pluto runs parallel to the asteroid Niobe. Here it is right here, which can deal with the death of a children, especially through drowning, because it's at the 16th degree of Leo. Leo represents children. So there's the death of his children aspect, along with Sun conjoined to Pluto, opposition Chiron in Pisces. That's death by drowning, children being killed by drowning right there. What else did I want to mention? Okay, synastry. So because they were born in such close proximity with each other, he was born September 6th. She was born July 2nd. His life path number is an 8. 8 symbolizes death. It also brings heavy karma to him. Also points to his job with NASA, which is a branch of the government. Also points to him being very controlling. Her life path number is, guess what, 29. That 29, like I always say, is a very challenging number. It's one of the most challenging numbers to deal with. It brings internal and external conflict. It brings severe challenges with motherhood, also challenges with the mother. It can bring challenges with pregnancy as well, so that could deal with her having the postpartum depression. All of that stuff brings challenges with food, so that explains her bulimia. So she has it bad. So combining her life path with his life path, that basically explains the mess that they got themselves into. Now, Rusty's Sun is right on Andrea's Pluto. So that right there basically points to him being totally consumed with her psychosis, totally wrapped up into her mental health issues, which basically shows that he was totally lying about him saying that he was unaware that she was psychotic. His moon is conjoined to her Pluto as well, and that could deal with him basically being totally, again, totally consumed with her psychosis. But it also points to with his Sun, Moon, and Mercury all on her Pluto, that points to him feeding into her psychosis, and maybe him being a contributing factor to her psychosis, which he definitely was, because he was the one that was her caretaker. So this shows that he was like totally consumed with her mental illness, and not in a good way, where he was basically a big trigger for her psychosis. And you could look at that as basically putting the ideas in her head about having children, making it seem like she didn't have any choice in the matter, his procreative rights, all that type of stuff. His Mercury right on her Uranus. Oh, let me go to the Synastry. My bad. His Mercury conjoined to her Uranus, right on her Uranus. So again, that could deal with him basically triggering her episode, her mental illness, him basically contributing to her unstable state. Like that right there also is like basically him contributing to her having this resolute attitude about certain things in life. And basically also where she takes him through a lot of changes as well. Now, Rusty's sun is in square to Andrea's Mars, and that right there points to him being so controlling to the point where it causes reactions in her. Because remember, his sun is also conjoined to Pluto at the same degree, so you got to take that into account. And the interesting thing is because they're born in such close proximity, she has her Pluto square and her Mars, which I said contributes to her psychotic episode. And his Pluto is also squaring her Mars as well. So his sun and Pluto is squaring her Mars, which shows that basically, again, he was a big time trigger for her erratic behavior, for her erratic actions, for her just flying off the handle. Also, his Mars is in Cancer and it's in semi-square to her Mars in Gemini, which shows that he kept on pushing her to have these children. He was all about family this, family that. And she wanted some options. She wanted a way out with that Mars and Gemini, but he wasn't making that possible for her. Also, his Saturn is in Sesame Square to her Mercury, which shows that when she was trying to communicate certain things to him, he wasn't listening to her. He would just tune her out. Shows that he was very controlling over her mind, over her thoughts. Let me see. His Mercury was opposed to her Saturn, which means that he was very much responsible for her. Basically, that points to her not being able to work, and her responsibility fell onto him. But it also shows where he basically was taking a hands-off approach a lot of times with respect to her delusions, with respect to her mental health issues. And it seemed like he would just like to leave her in the care of her doctors. That points to, again, him deflecting blame, saying, well, I'm not a medically trained professional. That was on her doctors to basically be in control of her health care and all that type of stuff. So that points to him deflecting blame, but it also points to where he was very much affected mentally by her mental state. But I'm seeing him being just as much mentally ill as she is. And again, with all these conjunctions involving her Pluto and Uranus and Virgo, it seemed like he was even entertained at times by her psychotic episodes. Like he strikes me as a very dark-sided individual, someone who is mentally unhinged himself, someone who is very controlling, someone who is very power seeking. And again, he sought power through having children and also by being able to have his wife under his submission. And that points to, again, his Saturn in Sesame Square to her Mercury. Also, it points to his sun being conjoined to her Pluto. Now, that sun conjoined to Pluto, in other cases, that could deal with her having power over him, which she did, but in an indirect way. That was her psychosis, basically having power over his life or controlling his life. But also, I'm seeing that where he was empowered. He felt empowered as a result of her psychosis because that meant that he was able to take full control over her life, everything. So let me know what you think in the comment section. That's part 2 of my astrological case study on Andrea Yates. Terrible story, tragic story, but again, I'm blaming Rusty Yates just as much as Andrea Yates in this, and I feel like he should have got prosecuted. I feel like he should be behind bars right along with Andrea Yates. So again, let me know what you think in the comment section. If you would like a reading, you could go to my website at rabina.com. Peace and many blessings.